You look nice.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you for joining us here today.
Sure. It's my pleasure.
Thank you. We'll just wait just for a few minutes until everyone joins in. How are you? How are you doing?
Well, thank you. I'm trying to do my best given the circumstances. Lots of work from home. I am designing my classes from home, preparing videos for my students, sharing it with them, and preparing notes, preparing online exams. So everything is at the computer. So it's interesting, yes.
Interesting.
But it's okay.
Yeah, it's interesting because for somehow we got all really busy. We thought we were gonna sleep as much as we wanted.
Sure.
It didn't go in that way. We're maybe more engaged with so many things now.
Yes, definitely. And we're more tired.
Yeah.
For parents, I guess it's more difficult because now we have to keep an eye on our children so that, you know, they do their homework. If they have any problems, we deal with that. So it's like more responsibilities around the house also.
Most important thing we now know, yes. Okay.
You froze for a minute. Okay, now you're back. How are you?
Yeah. Not bad. Still alive. That's what I always say.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's still nice that we continue with education and we continue with these sessions. Thanks to your valuable contribution, and we have so many people following us later, asking questions, joining a YouTube channel, and doing so many things. And it's nice being busy with something useful and also valuable. As I said, thanks to you.
Sure, of course, anything. You know, we're home, so we might as well be helpful or useful, you know, to people that don't know us, which is fine.
Okay, I'll just start give a brief information about you. Please correct me if I make any mistakes, because your CV is really loaded. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. I wish it was even more loaded than that. So we're working on it.
Okay. Hello everyone. I'm Sibel Ergün Elverici. I'm here on behalf of İstanbul Öğretmen Akademileri. We'll be delighted to see you in our educational programs later that we're going to open. And we put education in the heart of everything, human beings, human life. That's the most valuable for us. And now let me give you some brief information about Betül Eros Hoca. She's from Middle East Technical University, associate professor. She graduated. Then she studied at the University of Arizona Department of English Language and Linguistics program. Then she did her MA at the University of Arizona and she studied interdisciplinary program in second language acquisition and teaching. She's currently working at the Middle East Technical University, and she has lots of research interests. So some of them are intercultural communicative competence, international students and teachers, teacher education and training, reflective teaching, qualitative studies, and so on. She is the chief editor in a prestigious journal, and she continues editing in many other areas in ELT as well. I'd like to thank her again for joining us and not leaving us alone in these difficult
Oh, sure, of course.
And as we have it's a little bit complicated skill. It's like the headache of yes, they're fine now.
Yes, yes.
I'd like to start with something general. Last week we talked about grammar, whether it's a skill or not, how is it different from the skills. Is speaking a skill, would you say?
It's the most troublemaking skill, I can say, in language teaching. When we compare it to other skills, when we think of, well, we divide them into two. We could say listening and reading are receptive skills, and speaking and writing are productive skills. You know, listening, example, when you listen to a song or a lecture, or when you're trying to understand a conversation, it may be a bit passive, you know, you may not be required to give a response. The same thing with reading. If you have comprehension questions in the end, you're giving a novel. You don't have to the learner. You have to produce a text, an oral text or a written text. So you have to come up with the meaning yourself. So the learners are actively involved in meaning making when they're speaking. They have to use interaction strategies, and they have to, you know, use their competence, use grammar, use what they know of sound systems. So, you know, a lot of different elements are involved in speaking. That's why I'm saying it's a bit troublesome, because you can't do it passively. You know, it's a productive skill. And teaching speaking is challenging because of that, because it requires for the teacher to be competent, for, you know, learners to have certain resources with them. Learner exposure is critical in speaking, because, you know, they have to have access to the language so that they can use it, they can understand its usage and context. And it involves other skills, like it involves listening, because they have to listen to a message and respond to it, understand it, so they can respond to it accurately and appropriately. It involves knowing the sound system, you know, pronunciation, and grammar, you know, spoken grammar, because if you don't use grammatical sentences, then people won't be able to understand you. There may be some miscommunication issues. And there are also some cultural, pragmatic issues in talk, the appropriateness of the talk. So because the teacher has to think about all,
it makes it very challenging, because it involves so many factors, and it's not passive. It's got interaction strategies. You need to be a good listener also.
Sure.
And learner exposure is also important. I always try to ask from the young learners' point of view as well, because we have so many teachers teaching young learners, and I don't want them to be neglected. Young learners are our future. So
Sure.
a difference between teaching speaking to young learners and adults, and if there is a difference, what is the reason behind this difference?
Young young learners, as you just said, they are a very critical group, you know, because they are, the earlier we start teaching, the easier adults, especially children under the age of 11, 12, like before before their adolescent years. They're flexible, you know, they're playful, they like playing games, they are not, they're adventurous, you know, they have to ambiguity, like if they don't understand the message, like everything in a message, game. They are less inhibited than adults. They are less self-conscious. They have smaller egos, you know. So when you're teaching adults, you have all these problems because they may not be very playful, and they may not be very interested or motivated to play games. They may be scared of making mistakes, so they don't have much tolerance to ambiguity. So with children, you can actually speak to them and they can learn while they're speaking. Adults may sometimes need more of a push, or they might need more of structural input. You know, sometimes in adult classes, you may see your learners saying, so what is the rule? Give me the rule. So how does this, you know, how do we say this in Turkish? So there's always like a comparative, contrastive analysis of two languages because their first language is already learned and it's established. They rely on it for their daily actions. The children, especially very young kids, they may not have that. They may not even have literacy in their first language. So they can speak. They may not be inhibited. So it might be easier to teach children because they're more open to learning. But of course, there are things that you can do with adults, like talk about more, you know, abstract topics, engage in more communicative, more, let's say, communicatively heavy activities, group work activities, more calm teamwork activities, because with children, you know, things may get out of control sometimes. So there are, you know, advantages and disadvantages. I don't want to say one group is easier than the other, but there are differences, definitely.
Okay, so it's like in all the other aspects of language, communication, can we say communication is one of the key factors in teaching speaking to young learners?
You said what? Communicative?
Communication is the key, one of the key factors in teaching young learners, especially.
Sure, they learn really well through communicative games, through songs, nursery rhymes, you know, repetition, response activities like following the teacher's command and responding by performing a physical action. Enjoy interactive games, group projects, you know, those are things that you could do with adults. Develop their communicative competence, and it's very important, and it's very, very critical. And that's, I think, the challenging thing in teaching speaking, no matter what age group you're teaching.
So you have actually answered so many questions in one. Yeah, thank you. So if we are to paraphrase or say it again in how we should teach speaking to young learners and adults, we need to find communicative activities like projects,
Sure.
tasks, role plays, lots of pairs, presentations maybe, and depending on the group's level, I guess.
Definitely, definitely. So the aim of the teacher has to be developing first grammatical competence in the students, because it's very important, teaching accurate forms. Then also developing sociolinguistic competence, teaching them what is appropriate to say in what situation. Then helping them develop their strategic competence, how to maintain, how to repair conversations. It's very important. For example, when you're talking on the phone with somebody in Turkish and you can't hear them, how do you do that in English? What is the appropriate thing to say? Mm-hmm. So, knowing these things and being able to teach these things are critical for teachers. And also the teachers need to work on developing the discourse competence of the learners also. It is like teaching cohesion and coherence devices while writing or while devising a presentation or a talk or in speech in general. So building all of these competencies, it's a challenge, but it's important when you're teaching speaking.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. So it's not as easy as it looks. Although we said at the beginning it's not easy, it's difficult to achieve. So there are so many challenges involved, I guess. And what are the challenges do you think Turkish teachers, and both prospective and in-service Turkish teachers have in teaching English speaking, and how can they overcome such challenges?
That's a huge question. Do we have another 5 hours? So we can talk about, well, there are different types of challenges. I mean, there are personal challenges that teachers may have. There are system-related or administrative contextual challenges. One of the personal challenges that I observe in my students who are in-service teachers or pre-service teachers who are getting ready for in-service, or in our master's and PhD program we have in-service teachers also, in teaching speaking, is speaking itself. So being able to speak in English becomes a challenge for teachers. There are different reasons for this. They haven't had much exposure to English, or they haven't had opportunities to speak in English in their daily lives while they were growing up. I mean, this is our reality. They haven't had much practice in their academic background, maybe. And sometimes what happens is primary school or high school or university level students, beginner level students, year after year after year after year, the teachers, if they don't engage in professional development or some personal development, they start forgetting the things that they know. So their skills, and speaking skills is actually really bad about this, that you start losing your skills. So if you don't speak in English for a very long time, then you lose your fluency. So that's actually a problem. One of the problems that teachers have.
So first,
how do
teachers lack that? Can we say that lack that skill, speaking skill? I mean, they are not. They don't feel maybe comfortable, or they don't feel competent enough to speak themselves at the beginning.
I don't think that's something that they willingly do. I don't think teachers say, okay, I'm not going to give any importance to my own speaking. I don't think that's something that they do on purpose. It is actually part of our educational system. It is not, focused on developing communicative skills. It's not really, communication skills is not something that teachers can go outside and use. So because we are in an EFL setting in Turkey, rather than in an ESL setting where we could go outside and use our second language skills in our daily conversations. Teachers get actually kind of stuck with what they already know, and they cannot practice. They don't practice speaking. What can they do? So this is a challenge. Okay, we have teachers who have trouble speaking themselves. So how can you teach something you don't know, or how can you develop somebody else's skill when you're still struggling with your own skill? That is an issue. So, some cliche suggestions would be, spend some time in an English-speaking country, or go to a context where you can use your English. Not everybody has that opportunity, so, because it's expensive. Who's going to pay for all that? You might get an Erasmus grant. You might get a scholarship to get a higher degree in an English-speaking country or abroad. You can join a work and travel program, a study abroad program. You can get any short-term professional development program opportunity if your institution is willing to send you for a short while. You can try and deliver presentations at international conferences so you can travel. But of course, all of these things are expensive. Mm-hmm. So if money is the issue, or sometimes family issues, we have family issues, you can't just leave everything behind and go for like 4 weeks or half a year. Mm-hmm. That's normal. What are some alternatives? If you're not exposed to English in your daily life, how can you increase that exposure? You can increase your input by watching movies, listening to songs, watching the news online in English, watching online videos about anything that's of interest. This could be, this doesn't have to be academic topics. This could be yoga or dance, spiritual development, psychology, art, anything. Try and find conversation partners. We have foreign teachers in Turkey, and not necessarily native speakers, but foreign teachers who don't speak Turkish. They can exchange help, teach somebody how to speak Turkish so they'll, practice English with you. So, and you become friends with somebody who's trying to survive in Turkey. It's a nice thing to do. Could be a fellow teacher or a neighbor. So I suggest chasing, cornering, finding, anyone that you can practice with, or make a pact with your fellow teachers at your own institution so you speak in English all the time. There are also some academically related groups on social media, like the TESOL organization have all of those subgroups, or anything that's personal, yoga, and everything is on social media these days, that use English. These organizations, they use English as a lingua franca, so that's their common language for communication. So they can join these places first in writing, and then they can have, conversation partners, people that they're friends with, they can talk with them. So increase exposure to and your usage of English in your daily life when possible. So those are some things that teachers can do personally. But of course, there are things that we don't control, like system-related issues. For example, contact hours in class. So teachers will have 2 hours in class. They'll have, the second, third, and fourth graders will have 2 hours in class. By the time you ask everybody how their weekend was, that's the end of the class. So you don't have enough time with students, and after middle school, it's 4 hours. Still, it's not enough. They have to start with more focused hours, like maybe 8 or 10 hours of English every week, ideally, and then maybe decrease the hours. In our system, we do the opposite. So we have a system issue here. And teachers cannot change that. And also, I see in the cooperating schools that we go to for practicum, the classes are very crowded. Like there are, lots of students, 30, 35 students, sometimes even bigger classes. They get very loud. They're, overactive classes sometimes. The teacher spends half of class time hushing the students down, trying to calm them down. So the context, the environment for teaching may not always be suitable for the teacher to continue with their communicative activities as they like them. And of course, there's the issue of resources, access to internet, having computers in the classroom. Not everybody has access to all of these technological gadgets and issues. So that's a problem. And maybe textbooks. There are some speaking tasks in the textbooks, but they may be a bit mechanical. There may not be information gap in those tasks. So these, of course, these are issues that the teachers can overcome, but the system-related administrative issues, you know, we're stuck with them for now.
And so not much to do about them. So from what you said, I guess the important thing to improve our speaking skill is find something communicative, anything that is interesting, not necessarily academic, or a foreign teacher or a foreign friend, maybe they
exchange. Yeah.
some,
sure.
And that will help us to improve ourselves, and in that way we'll be able to help and maybe reach our students more, and then encourage and also increase their speaking skills.
Definitely, that's very important.
Because first, as teachers, we need to improve our speaking skills, because most of us, didn't get the chance to practice that.
Yes,
Exactly. Be of much use to our students. So in order to solve that, we have to improve ourselves first. And there are some issues from the system that we can't solve on our own, like the hours you said. And maybe for that, maybe can we suggest outside class activities, like maybe what they call as informal learning outside school? Can we say that? I know, I mean, it's a big problem. It's not like we can solve it by doing 2 hours extra work outside the class, but just maybe a drop in the ocean.
Sure. I mean, there are things that teachers can, some tasks that the teachers can assign their students. I'm going to talk about some of them actually. And I'll also talk about the assessment of speaking too. Well, there are things that the teachers can ask their students to do in class and for class. You know, so when we're thinking about speaking skills, developing speaking skills, we think about like developing pronunciation. That's one of the things. And then developing presentation or delivery skills. So in order to develop pronunciation, in classroom, the teacher can bring tongue twisters, you know, practice with the students. What I do with my students who are in their freshman year is I do a diagnostic presentation, self-presentation. You know, they just do a presentation about themselves. And I take down notes about what their problems are, you know, or, you know, I give them a 1-minute talk task. I give them a question and I ask them to talk for 1 minute. You know, for 60 seconds, they'll just talk. And I note down some of the problems, some of the weaknesses that they may have in their speech. So later on, I work with each student, and sometimes as a whole class, with these, you know, sound issues by doing some sound-focused exercises, stress, intonation, articulation exercises, you know, focusing on fossilized problems. And I'm not very good at dealing with fossilized problems because my students, when they come to me at university, they're 18, 19 years old. And after that time, it's really difficult to get rid of the fossilized issues. And I don't really like this word very much, but, you know, sometimes we do the same exercise several times and I still get the same problem. So, you know, going back to what I said earlier in our talk, earlier we start the better it is. So for classroom, for example, our students could sing songs. This is one of the things that I do for my classes. It's one of the tasks that they're graded on. They'll sing songs. Maybe they're too shy to sing songs in the classroom. Then they can read a poem. If they don't like poems, then they can report a piece of news. Or, do an interview with somebody. But sometimes the students, they're shy. They don't want to speak in front of the classroom. We may talk about communicative activities. What are they? The role play activities, discussions, debates, stuff like this. And then I come and I say, okay, you'll come and do karaoke in the classroom, sing a song. So my students get a bit shocked. So I give them the option, for example, to bring a video of their speaking, singing, or reciting. If they feel self-conscious, the new generation these days, they're very savvy, very technologically savvy. They can do anything with the smartphones and the tablets. So they'll bring you their YouTube video link where they're singing this several times so that they can produce something that's similar to that. So you're encouraging two skills at the same time. So these are some of the things that they can do to help them improve their presentation delivery skills. What we can do is we could ask them to do little TED Talks in class or again as online videos. When I say TED Talks, don't think like they have to do these 1-hour talks about these serious issues like the real TED Talks. They're going to be our TED Talks. So they will be about topics that they're interested in, age-appropriate topics. I mean, my son is 9 years old, and he's very fluent in English, and he talks about the environment, how to save the environment. He makes videos of himself and takes it to class, all of these things. The kids can do that. So, we have to trust them with that. Maybe older learners would be interested in engaging in mini discussions, debates on social issues, controversial issues. In class, they can listen to some introductory pieces. They may actually watch some videos about controversial issues, and then they can pick a side and be on either the for or the against side of the debate. So these are some things that we could do in the classroom. But of course, we have to teach them the vocabulary related to debating. How do you make a case? How do you support an argument? They can't do that on their own. So of course, for us, we have to constantly feed them structurally, semantically, morphologically. So we have to constantly feed the structural part, the pragmatic part of the students' skills. Another thing is improving daily interaction skills, which is very difficult because they don't use English in their daily interactions. Movies, scripts from movies, news pieces, situational comedies, or the Tonight Show or something like this. We have to analyze the flexibility of daily talk, and look at how it's flexible in terms of using grammar. How do people use humor? What are some social issues that they're talking about? What are some values that they have? How are they reflected in talk? Regional differences, using vocabulary. So our students will get familiar with world Englishes. I'm not just talking about, British movies, American movies. I'm talking about anybody who speaks English. Because when we're out there in the world and we speak in English, we're not just talking to native speakers. So we're talking to people from different backgrounds, and that's our common aware of different dialects, different in classroom, we do situational chit-chat. You can do this with any age group. With little kids, you could do, okay, you go to a coffee shop with your friend, and your friend's cousin from Canada is here, and you have to talk to them about your school. What do you like about your school? What do you dislike about your school? So this is, one chit-chat they can do in class. Older learners, they can talk about a movie that you watch as a whole class. a discussion about the movie. They can do negotiation tasks. For example, you're going to rent a house with your best friend. How do you choose the house? Real life tasks that they have to do in their second language. Let me see, what else can they do? They would do team speaking tasks. They can act out a scene from a movie. This is always a fun task. My students first get scared about this because they think, okay, we have to go to class and we have to act out, we have to memorize all of those things. Then I give them the option of doing a video clip, and they will go and find costumes. They will find, my students did a helicopter on campus, and they found a helicopter. So they will be very enthusiastic about this. They can do.
We had a problem with communication. We had some connection problems. So I hope you can hear us. And Betül Hoca okay. Oh, okay. We had some connection problems, unfortunately. Thank God.
That's okay. I crashed the system. I talked so much. Oh my God, it kicked me out.
We had so many issues regarding speaking. That's why.
It's okay.
So many people are asking. As soon as it got disconnected, people started sending messages. So what happened? Where is Betül Hoca? Is it finished, or now we're back? Yeah.
We cut her off. Okay, no problem. We were talking about things that we could do in the classroom. These are some of the things that I suggest, and these are some of the things that I do in my own classes. You can adapt all of these things to young learners. As I said, you can do them with children who are willing, always very willing to go along. As I told you, I have a 9-year-old who like English.
Yeah, I like English.
Yes. Do you remember how you learned English?
Yeah, I remember.
Who did you learn it from?
I learned it from my mom.
You learned it from your mother.
And
Okay.
my teachers. That's how I learned English.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, actually, I actually told them, maybe I'll ask you some questions, you know, because I wanted to make a point about how easy it is for children to learn English. He was a year and a half when he was reciting, you know, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and he couldn't make a full sentence in Turkish, but he could, you know, recite the nursery rhymes. So the earlier the better. If I have parents here, you know, sometimes parents are always so self-conscious about making mistakes. You know, we're always concentrating on making mistakes and messing up our children's lives.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Just we got a lot of questions asking about fluency versus accuracy, whether it's fluency is more important or accuracy. So in that context, maybe you might want to answer that.
Sure, but they're not going to like my answer because I don't think one is more important than the other. I think fluency and accuracy, they go together. That's one of the things that we talked about earlier, you know, the challenges of Turkish teachers. We have accuracy. We can pass any standardized test in the world, yet we may not be able to go to a formal, informal party and introduce ourselves confidently. Because we don't have fluency, and that affects our confidence. So they have to go hand in hand. The reason why I'm suggesting, you know, watch movies, you know, start, you know, be in an English-speaking context for a while. So all of these things will push us into using language, into using English, and into developing or, you know, realizing our own strengths and weaknesses, and working on those things. We're adults, we're teachers, we know how these things work. We learned the first language, we learned the second language. Some of us, we know a third and fourth language, so we know how this works. So we'll have to turn our eye to ourselves and see where we have to add appropriateness to this equation. So because without that pragmatic information, without pragmatic competence, we cannot really convey our message successfully. You know, in order to maintain social relationships, we need to have all of those things. But of course, accuracy is maybe the easiest to develop because you can learn grammar from a book. You can study on your own. You know, you can take tests and test yourself.
Again, it's grammar. We all focus on grammar for some reason. We cannot.
We can't get rid of grammar. I'm sorry. So if the people who were asking these questions were expecting me to say of fluency, as long as you convey your message, it's okay. It's okay if you're a tourist in an English-speaking country and you're not an English teacher. It is all right. But for English teachers, it is not all right to just have fluency. And I can't really see how you can have fluency without accuracy. Like, what are you doing? Sense. So if you are an English teacher, all of us, we need all of these things. Of course, for touristic purposes, it is even cute to try and use the language of the place that you're visiting. For example, I remember when I was in Paris, I had very little French from university, and I went to a deli, and I was looking to get some sandwiches, and I was trying to use all my French that I didn't remember to order a salmon sandwich. So after like 2 minutes of stomach ache and, you know, driving the guy at the counter crazy, so I was trying my best to use my foreign language, and I was not successful. So I know that I lacked both accuracy and fluency, or maybe my sentences were accurate, but I was very slow. But for touristic purposes, that's okay. But for teaching purposes, we have to be the whole thing.
Oh, I
I'm
see.
sorry. So, there's no other answer from me. But there may be some more calming, some more humane answers from other scholars. But I think English teachers have to have very, not perfect, not native-like maybe, but they have to be very competent in speaking, listening, writing, reading. Of course, at the bottom of all of that, we can talk about grammar too, because that actually shapes our sentences, that gives us, our structure, and that determines what we say and what we write. So we can't get rid of that. Would you like me to talk about assessment? There was a question about assessment. And before we get kicked off again, maybe we'll talk about that.
We have something like 5 minutes, then the system automatically throws us out. So would you briefly say a few things about assessments of speaking?
Of course. I'll again talk about the things that I do. I use analytical rubrics in my classes. I like showing my students their strengths and weaknesses, because I think it's very important. I don't like holistic. Focus on if I can do it on this. Can I? No. So for example, I use rubrics like this. I have very detailed information that I give to my students. If they're working in groups, I give them a group grade, and also I give them an individual grade. I divide talk into different segments, like pronunciation and expression, content and development, and nonverbal communication issues. So there are all of these things that are under these, and I grade them like this. I also have some other evaluation forms. I have so many rubrics. I would be happily with teachers if they're interested, because I think it's just fair to students to tell them you're weak in this, but you're strong in that, and not give them like a grade like 75 and they don't know what that is. So giving some detailed feedback, one-on-one feedback, and giving them some suggestions for improvement, I think it's really priceless for speaking.
I see. Okay. Betül Hocam, thank you very much. Thank you so much. You're right. We
You're
could
welcome.
go on like hours when it's and when it's you. Thank you for your friendliness. I mean, and
Oh, you're
valuable
welcome.
İstanbul
No
Akademileri
problem. No problem.
teachers.
Thank you for your invitation, actually, and thank you everybody for your interest, for joining. And yes, if you want, you can follow me, and I would be happy to share things with you. You can find my email. You can just Google me. New generation. You can do anything. Okay. Thank you, Sibel Hocam, very much for this opportunity.
We are delighted. Thank you so much again.
Thanks.
Hope to see you again.